Hello and welcome to another session in physics. In this session we'll be looking at the topic conduction of electricity in gases. But before that, let's review our previous lesson. Welcome back. In this lesson, let's see the conditions for electrical discharge using the discharge tube. Now, according to this slide, you'll notice here that experiments conducted with a discharge tube shows that gases are capable of conducting electricity under low pressure and a high potential difference. Gases are reminiscent for their high pressure. So at very low pressure and very high voltage, the gas in the tube discharges and breaks into what we call ions. This enables them to conduct electricity. Now, the positive ions that have been discharged from the discharge tube as a result of the low pressure and high voltage exhibited by the gas, they move or gravitate towards the cathode. And then on the other hand, the negative ions and the free electrons move towards the anode. Remember, the cathode is the negative electrode and the anode is the positive electrode. And sometimes the polarity could change depending on the specific kind of reaction in progress. So the positive ions are capable of knocking off electrons from the metal plate of the cathode. The electrons that are produced at the cathode are what we call cathode rays. Now let's see characteristics of cathode rays as gases tend to conduct electricity. One of the characteristics they possess is that they consist of streams of fast-moving electrons. The second is that they cause glass and other materials to glow or fluoresce with a greenish color. The third is that they travel in straight lines. The fourth is that they are deflected by electric and magnetic field. Also, they can ionize a gas. Additionally, they will be able to turn a light paddle wheel in the tube because they have mass, they have momentum, and they have energy. So they have the capacity to turn a light paddle wheel that is put in the discharge tube. The seventh thing they can do, or the seventh characteristic of cathode rays, is that they are highly energetic particles. They are highly energetic particles. They possess a high amount of energy. Also, they can affect photographic plates. Ninthly, they are capable of producing X-rays from what we call high density metals when they are suddenly stopped by such metals. So when they hit high density metals, they have the capacity or the capability to produce X-rays. And then finally, a characteristic of cathode rays is that they have what we call high penetrating power. They have the ability to penetrate through strong metals such as aluminium, steel, and gold foil. So these are the characteristics of cathode rays. Now let's see their applications, their practical applications. One application of cathode rays is the fact that in fluorescent tubes, they are used commercially for lighting and they are also used in display signs. If you've ever been to eateries or restaurants or fuel stations, you would see something like "Welcome to our fuel station" or "Welcome to our filling station" or "Welcome to our shop" or "Goodbye" signs, and so on and so forth. That is the application of cathode rays. That lighting you see comes from cathode rays that are existent in fluorescent tubes, which are used for these commercial lightings and display signs. Now, what helps these signs to give out lights is because the tube contains what we call mercury vapor. Mercury vapor has the capacity to glow or fluoresce at low pressure when cathode rays are passed through them. Remember that cathode rays are produced at the principle of low pressure and high voltage. So at the present, or at the condition of low pressure and high voltage, cathode rays are able to carry out the above mentioned functions. If you look critically at this diagram here, this is an example of a ray tube where we have the cathode rays, we have the air at very low pressure, we have the discharge tube, we have our anode, and we also have the vacuum pump, and most importantly we have the high voltage generator, which provides the EMF source. Now let's talk about a very important phenomenon which is known as thermionic emission. Thermionic emission simply refers to the emission or release of electrons when a metal is sufficiently heated to a very high temperature. Yes, when you get a metal, for example, let's say a zinc plate, and this zinc plate is exposed to a very high amount of temperature, electrons are released or emitted from the surface of this metal. This process is known as what we call thermionic emission. Now, when the filament is heated to a high temperature, we notice that extra energy is given to its free electrons at the surface of the metal, and this enables them to break through the surface of the metal and exist outside it as what we call an electron cloud. So this kind of summarizes everything we need to know on thermionic emission. Now there's an instrument that is very important known as the diode valve. The diode valve seeks to apply the principle of the thermionic emission. The diode valve is what you see here in the diagram. It consists of an anode. As you can see here, it consists of an anode. This anode usually is in the form of a cylinder, and then it consists of a hot filament, a heater, which is made up of a tungsten wire, and there are some components that surround this filament. All these component parts are enclosed in a highly evacuated glass bulb, which is what you see in this diagram here. Now let's look at a diode and its action. Just like we have capacitors and resistors, we also have diodes. Diodes are electric components that allow the passage of current only in one direction. The diode characteristics curve shows that a diode valve does not obey Ohm's law, and that is why diode valves are called non-ohmic conductors. The reason for this, like I earlier said, is because the action of a diode only allows current to flow in one direction. So the valve is used as a rectifier in order to produce DC voltage from an AC supply. It is used as a rectifier to produce DC voltage from an AC supply. So here you see the diode and what it looks like. Its electrical symbol is given by this. We have LEDs. LEDs are known as light emitting diodes. Yes, they are diodes that are able to glow and produce light. Now you notice that a diode, essentially the color is black and a silver color. The part that links to the silver color is the cathode, the negative electrode, and the other part that is covered with the black lining is called the anode or the positive electrode. But one thing about the diode is that it does not allow current to flow in two directions. Diode allows current to flow only in one single direction. Now let's look at an instrument called the cathode ray oscilloscope. The cathode ray oscilloscope is an instrument that we use to investigate currents and voltages in electronic circuits. I'll take that again. The cathode ray oscilloscope is an instrument that we use to investigate the presence of currents and voltages in electronic circuits. As you can see from the diagram here, it is made up of a vacuum tube containing an electron gun. This is the electron gun, containing an electron gun at one end, and it contains a fluorescent screen at the other end. In between these two pairs of deflector plates near the middle of the tube, deflector plates near the middle of the tube, the electron gun can be found there. Also, the cathode ray oscilloscope is used for studying all types of wave forms, especially the one we call the alternating current waveform. The alternating current waveform moves sinusoidally. This is the waveform of an alternating current. But for a direct current moves in straight lines in one single direction. We also use the cathode ray oscilloscope to measure the frequencies and amplitudes of voltage of electronic devices. And that's it for today's lesson. Thank you so very much for joining us in this lesson. And to refresh your memory on what we've just discussed, please take the test that will appear on your screen.